Hello everybody, it's Mike GoLeafsGoEh Leah here with you, and this is hand number 1 of the WCOOP main event. As some of you may know, I went pretty deep, ended up making it all the way to the final table, and we made a 5-way deal, locking up $560,000 for myself, which was the biggest win of my career, which is pretty awesome. We're going to do a hand history review video here for TPE. This is part 1. This is hand number 1. Obviously, this tournament was a very, very long tournament. I think we played 13 hours on day 1 and about another 10 hours on day 2. So especially at the beginning of the tournament, we're going to go through hands pretty quickly, focusing just mainly on the hands that I'm playing, and as we get deeper in the tournament, we'll take a bit more time. So this is my very first starting table. Wasn't that thrilled when I first saw it. I have RDCRSN, Russ Carson, who's a beast, directly on my left, except, for the most part, I know he's going to play probably pretty similar to me early in the tournament, which is pretty tight. But then I have John Duffy to his left, who I expect to be playing a ton of hands, and Crazy Allure to his left, who's going to be pretty active and aggressive. Was my beginning read. All right, so this is the very first hand. I got King 10 in the cutoff. I believe it folds to me. My min raise, as I'll be doing through the entire tournament. I get past Russ on the button, which is really the only thing I want to happen. I don't want to play this hand out of position against anyone, but I don't mind playing against either of the blinds. They both fold, and I win the very first hand of the tournament. Very exciting. And we move along here. So this is the next one. So as you can see here at the bottom of the replayer, hands in green are the ones I win, hands in red are the ones I lose. And the darker it is, I think the bigger the pot it is. So I lose this hand here. This is the next one I play. Still would be the first orbit. And we got 9-7 suited in the big blind. As you can see, we're 400 big blinds deep, which is pretty unique. This tournament plays insanely deep. It folds around to the small blind, who raises. I defend in position, very deep, of course, and in position with kind of a cool hand. Flop comes King Jack 9, 2 spades. As the flop comes down, I flop bottom pair, and I expect myself to peel his c-bet, but he ends up bombing it 4/5 pot, and I just didn't really like his bet sizing. I didn't feel like chasing him down. It seemed like he was trying to build a big pot right away, or maybe he had a big draw, or maybe he had an overpair that he was kind of scared of the board of, or something. I just didn't like his bet sizing. There's no reason for me to get involved in a marginal situation, so I just folded and moved on. Folding all these hands, 9-7, 6-5, King 5, 8-9. So we'll just move along here to the next one that I play. King 7 off on the button. I'm assuming this just folds to me and I min raise and take it down. Yeah, and that's what happens. Okay, and I play another hand here. You'll probably notice as we go through that most of the hands I'm going to be playing are going to be from late position, or probably pretty high quality hands from early position. So I got Ace-4 suited here in the hijack. I'm expecting this to fold around to me, which it does. Again, I open with a min raise. This time I have Russ and John in position. I believe one of them probably plays this hand with me. No, looks like we go right to... Oh, never mind. Okay, I min raised and stole the blinds. So far in this tournament, every hand that I've opened, I've just stolen the blinds. They've let me just take the first 3. I don't expect the guys to my left to do that very often, and I believe the next hand is going to be a little bit different. Yeah. Okay, I remember this hand because this was the first big hand I played in the tournament. It's going to fold to me, and I'm going to open jacks. Now, this is the very next hand after I stole the blinds, and this time I have RDCRSN, John Duffy, and Crazy Allure in position. And I kind of expect some resistance this hand just because they folded to every other one of my raises. This is the second hand in a row, and it just seemed like this is the hand that they were going to maybe give me a bit of resistance, or maybe pick that first 3-bet. So I open with a min raise. Russ folds. John flats, which I kind of expected him to be doing a lot of in this tournament. I haven't played with him that much, but just kind of from knowing who he is and his persona, and that's sort of what I expected to happen. Crazy Allure squeezes on the button. Now, again, this wasn't a big shock. I kind of expected this to happen, so I wasn't giving him much credit for a hand. And I didn't want to 4-bet and put myself in a real awkward position, out of position, this early in the tournament, building a huge pot. So I pretty much decided I was going to just call and sort of disguise the strength of my hand and just play it for its value against what I felt was his weak squeezing range. The only negative of this is I know John's going to come along and I'm going to be playing a 3-way pot out of position against both. But again, 400 chips out of 20,000 at this point is not a lot. So I make the call, John makes the call, and the flop comes Queen 9-5 Rainbow, which isn't bad for jacks. Obviously, there's only one overcard. The only thing I don't like about this flop is that I feel it's kind of all over the button's squeeze range. Like if he's squeezing with 10 jack, queen jack, 9-10 suited, like those kind of hands, he could have me beat, or he could have a pretty decent draw, king jack. Like any of those kind of hands, I don't love my hand against. I'd much rather him have like an ace rag kind of hand or something, obviously, but it seems like not a bad flop for me. It checks to the button and he bets 750 into 1350. I'm happy about his bet sizing here because he's not bombing it, and I don't want to have to check call huge bets here. So I'm happy he doesn't bomb it. I'm happy to call this, and I'm hoping John's going to fold, so that will just be heads up, which he does. So everything's going just kind of as I want so far. Pot's already 28.50, so it's getting up there. If he does decide to bomb the turn and river, this could end up being a pretty big pot, and you're always kind of a bit of a fragile position, out of position. But the turn's an ace, and where some people might hate this card thinking that it improved his hand, I actually was happy about this card because I feel now that if he does have air, he's definitely going to bomb the turn again, and I'm probably going to get an extra big bet out of this hand, whereas if the turn was a brick, he might have just given up. So I expect him to bet pretty big here. He doesn't really bomb it, but he increased his bet sizing a bit, maybe about 60% of the pot. He bet 17.25 into 28.50. I'm definitely calling here 100% of the time. If he has ace rag, I probably expect him to bet smaller, or to maybe check behind and to go for a river bet. So I call 17.50, and at this point there's really almost no river card that I'm going to fold to, just because that he's been he squeezed on the button, he bet the flop, he double barreled the scare card on the turn, so I expect him to probably continue on most cards. Really the only cards I don't want to see are cards that sort of complete straights, like the king jack if a 10 came, or queen or an 8 would get 10 jack there. River card ends up being a jack, giving me a set. King 10 got there, some kind of backdoor flush got there, but it's going to be almost impossible for me to fold this river because he could be value betting hands that I have beat. If he does have ace queen, if he does have ace jack, a set of 9s, a set of 5s, he's going to be betting those cards again. So it's going to be like basically impossible for me to fold this river at this point. I check to him, he checks behind. Obviously I know I won when he checks behind, and interesting to see what he has. And he has pocket 10s, which was kind of a weird hand. So he had a real hand pre-flop, and he was betting a hand that he thought would most likely be the best hand on the flop. His hand's very similar to mine, of course, on the flop. But then when the ace came on the turn, it looks like he then decided to try and get me to fold king queen or pocket jacks, which is really kind of the only two hands that he could put me on that he now is trying to get fold when the ace comes, and then the jack came on the river and he decided not to bluff again. So that was a pretty nice pot. Got me right up to 23,000, and again we're only playing 25.50, 20k deep, so that was a pretty big pot for this early in the tournament. The very next hand, I get ace jack and I min raise it, and this time John Duthie 3-bets me, and I just let him have this one. I don't necessarily think that he has a hand. I just won a big pot, and I'm opening the next hand. I almost kind of expect to get 3-bet again, but I'm still going to open it. It's only 100 chips, and I'm going to get flatted by some worse aces. So, all right. So we move along, and let's go to the next hands here. We'll get to the next one that I play. So we're still haven't played any other hands here, and then we get King Queen in early position. So as I remember so far, the only hands that I've played are all hands that I opened. I guess other than that 9-7 suited that I defended, but I might just take down the blinds with King Queen, and I'm happy to get through. And basically just kind of, I'm really trying to avoid big pots. I don't want to get involved in big pots and risk my tournament life at this stage of the tournament. I'm really only looking to to get into small pots, speculate a bit here and there, and hopefully just chip up slowly without ever putting my tournament life at risk. So the blinds just went up here, 30-60. The blinds in this tournament were 30 minutes long, which is obviously very, very long for an online tournament, so it gives you a ton of time. Jack 10 suited I opened. I get flatted by John Duthie, and a squeeze comes from late position. And as opposed to the jacks, this hand I'm just going to fold. Again, I don't want to get involved with marginal hands out of position. I'm really only going to be playing hands for value this early in the tournament. I don't want to get spewy, and I don't want to just give away a lot of chips. If I was in position, I definitely might call a 3-bet with this hand. I'm going to be able to play it a lot easier and kind of control the size of the pot a bit better. So I fold. John Duthie calls, and look at the flop. So if we'd played this hand, could have ended up playing a really big pot. I remember this hand because I remember how it plays out and what I thought might have happened if I was in it. So John Duthie checked. He c-bets about half, maybe a little bit less than half pot. John, I remember this, he just snap called, just very, very fast call. Turns an ace. Now, if I was involved in this hand, I very likely would have check raised the flop with such a huge hand. Although because I actually had the pair, I might have just check called to get him to put in more chips with a worser hand and just control the size of the pot if I am beat. But the ace came on the turn, and I believe it goes check. And I think Semi has ace queen in this hand, and I believe John Duthie had a pair and a straight draw. I think 7-8 of spades. No, not 7-8 of spades. 6-5 of spades. I think he ends up having this hand. So he had bottom pair, turn the flush draw. Goes check. 4 of spades on the river. And I believe John Duthie bombs it here, like 1700. Now, it's an awkward spot here for the squeezer. He has ace queen. He checked it behind on the turn to maybe get John Duthie to bluff the river. Obviously, queen jack missed. Obviously, hearts missed. But John's betting so big, it really looks like he's going for value. It doesn't, it screams like a value bet to me, but it's a tough decision for Semi when he has ace queen. It was 6-7 of spades, and ace queen muck, and it was a big pot for John. And obviously, he made a very speculative call, the 3-bet with 6-7 suited, just like mine would have been with Jack 10 suited, and he ended up getting there and winning a nice hand. All right, so we'll move through. Here I got pocket 4s on the button, and we're still hanging around at 23,000 chips. It folds to me, I raise and I steal the blinds, and we move on. Okay, here's an example of a hand that I'm just not going to play from early position at this this deep or this early in a tournament, this deep stacked. Ace-8 offsuit, I just fold. King 5, 6-3. King Jack in the big blind. Alright, now this is a hand that a lot of people. It also looks now that I've changed tables. So I moved to a new table. As I quickly look around this table, I see Shaniac on my left, and there's no other names that I recognize. So I was actually pretty happy about this table change. Seems like a much easier table, or at least players that I don't know anyway, as opposed to a bunch of guys that I know directly on my left. So I was happy about this. Shaniak 3Xs from early position. I expect him to be one of the more aggressive players on this table for sure. Now it says I win this hand. I'm guessing a few more people are going to come into the spot, because I'm not usually going to defend King Jack offsuit against an early position raiser, although because it is Shaniak, I may decide to flat sometimes for value, knowing that he's opening Queen Jack and King 10, hands like that. But ends up getting one flat, and I guess I just decided to come along this hand, so I call. Flops Ace-6-6, not a very good flop for King Jack. I think I remember this hand, and the way I win this hand is it checks around to the river, which is a king, and I finally decide to bet out, and I believe I chop with Shaniak's King-Queen, if I remember correctly. So it checks around, turns a deuce. I'm still just checking the fold. I'm not going to bother trying to win this pot. It's a very small pot. If someone does have a middle pair like tens or jacks, I don't expect them to just fold with one bet. And I think it's likely that someone may have a weak ace that they didn't feel like betting on the flop. So I just don't think it's worth it to try and bluff at this pot. It checks around again, and a king comes. Now, obviously, one of them could have a king and one of them could have king queen, but because of the pair on the board and the ace, I chop with king queen. So I decided to go ahead and bet this to try and get value from pocket queens or pocket jacks. So I bet a bit more than half pot. Shaniak calls. He has king queen, and we chop the hand. Okay. Right, so move on, and actually it's interesting there. Go back to this last hand. King queen suited. Now it says that I don't win or lose this hand, so I'm wondering if it gets squeezed. Oh no, it just doesn't show up, but okay. So I call this one. King queen suited again. I definitely just like a flat here. I don't want to squeeze out worser kings or queens or lower flush draws or anything like that, and I don't want to build a big pot out of position. There's no antes or anything to steal. I'm basically just looking to play a hand for value and put a little amount of chips in, and if I hit something decent, try and take a decent amount of chips out. So we end up going three ways to the pot. Flop comes Jack 7-5 rainbow. I have the two overs, and I have a backdoor, straight and flush draw or royal flush draw. But again, I'm probably not going to peel a card here if someone bet. If the button bet here, sometimes I might kind of sort of quasi float or even check raise, because I do have outs, and he's often just checking or betting because it was checked to him. But he checks behind, kind of taking that move away from me. At this point, there's a lot of cards on the turn that I'm probably going to lead out on, because there's not many cards in the deck that won't sort of improve my hand, be it by a draw or by a pair. The deuce of diamonds is not one of them, so I think I probably don't bother. Where I might have been planning to come out betting, I probably just decide to check again. Yeah, I do. This time the opener bets, and we both fold, and that's the end of that hand. Right, next hand I got Queen 5 of diamonds on the button. Now it's saying that I lose this hand, so I'm guessing one of two things happens. Either it limps in and I decide to limp in on the button, or it folds to me and I decide to raise the button. It seems like the only possibilities of me playing this hand. So it folds to me, I min raise the button. Shaniak defends, as not a shock to me. He likes to play hands, and we seem to like to play hands against each other. We have a lot of history going back lots of years, and in live tournaments and online tournaments. So I'm not going to really try to get too out of line with him, because he's probably not going to believe me all that much. So I'm going to be looking to mostly just put chips in when I have it against him. So flop comes King 9-7. I don't bother c-betting. I just check behind. Turn gives me a 5, giving me a pair. He bets out just over half pot. I decide to call because he could just be betting because I checked back. He could be betting flush draws, straight draws, or any pair. So I just decide to peel just to see what he does on the river. River's a 7 pairing the board. He checks, I check back, and I believe he has 10-9. Yeah. All right, so he wins that small little pot of our first button versus big blind battle. And we're still kicking around right at 23,000 chips, basically right where we were after that. We only played the one big hand and we won it. And King 10 off in the big. I assume I would probably defend here against the button or the small blind, maybe the cutoff, but I'm pretty sure I just fold here. Even though the button flats, I still get out of the way just because I feel my hands, just too often dominated. Comes 7-6 deuce, bet, raise, re-raise, and a fold. Obviously, we wouldn't have got involved with King 10 anyway, but it's an interesting hand. Ace 4 off here in the small. Again, this is a hand that I almost never play unless it was like limped or raised from very late position. It went limp and a really, really small ISO raise, less than 3x. Again, I could have tried to re-steal here, but my philosophy this early in the tournament, I'm just not really looking to get involved with marginal hands, and again, especially out of position. There's just no reason. There's no antes. There's very little money in the pot. It's not worth the risk. So I just fold, and we'll get on to the next one that I play. Okay, and here I got pocket deuces. There's an early position raise. Now, this is a hand that I'm definitely going to play in early stages of a tournament because I'm only have to spend 180 chips, and if I can hit a set against a pair or an over pair, I should be able to get some a few good bets out of it and some good value. And it doesn't cost me very much. So folds around, we end up playing heads up, me and the under the gun raiser who 3x'd, ace queen 7. I expect him to c-bet, and even though I could often steal this hand, I'm just not going to waste chips. I have so many chips where I can speculate and actually just hit real hands and try and get value out of them. I don't really see the need to try and force the action or steal pots for the most part. If things change and I have trouble winning hands or making hands, then I may sort of change my strategy. But at this point, I'm still well ahead in chips, and I'm just happy to just sort of keep on speculating. Here I have ace 10 in early position. Under the gun +1 min raises, and yeah, I just fold. From an early position raise, I don't expect him to have many worse aces. I expect him to have me dominated way more than I would have him dominated. So, why bother playing? Someone else could still squeeze the pot, so I'll just get out of the way and wait for a better hand. Here I got pocket fives on the button, or in the big blind, I'm sorry. And, again, just similar like to the deuces, I'm definitely going to try and peel a flop here and hit a set. But it goes raise from early position, the button squeezes, and I'm pretty sure I just fold. It's 700 for me to call, and of course I am getting set mining odds, but it's a really big amount to just speculate on. And it's possible that under the early position raise could still re-squeeze the pot, and then I'm just giving away the 700 chips. And of course, even though I'm set mining, there is always a chance that I get set undersetted because I have a small pair, and I just didn't think it was worth the risk here, and I'm pretty sure I folded, yeah, which I did. Alright, so he just won the pot. I didn't get to see the flop, and we move on, and I have to, wonder if I would have hit a set. Alright, so here we got Jack 10 suited. I'm going to just scroll the screen here along so we can see the next hands coming up. Okay, and it says that I win this pot, but it's a pretty small pot. I'm expecting that, well, the blinds are up again now, so we're at 40-80. I min raise, and Shaniak just lets me have his blinds this time. And we'll move through the next hands. I have ace 4 suited under the gun. Now, this is a hand that I've talked with a lot of people about, not like this specific hand, but this hand range being suited aces. Now, I believe that suited aces have a similar value to small pocket pairs. I don't like to fold these hands because, especially in the early stages of the tournament, people are playing a lot of suited cards. They're never going to fold, King Jack suited or Queen 10 suited or any of those hands, and even 5 6 of hearts or hands like that. So suited aces have a ton of extra value because you're often going to have people that have lower flush draws in the same hand as you. So if you flop a flush draw, you can have them pretty much drawing dead. Or if you both make a flush, you can win a huge pot or even sometimes stack someone, just by playing a hand with a suited ace. So I'm definitely going to always play this hand. So I min raise from under the gun, and I end up just stealing the blinds this time. But that's a hand that I'm almost always going to play. Now here I get another table change. I'm just going to grab a drink here. Now quickly, I guess this is a brand new table because it's not full yet at this stage. But I know Garfield. He's a reg that I've played with for quite a few years. I don't remember playing with that much lately, but I remember definitely a few years ago. And as in Tracker, I know and I expect him to be one of the more aggressive players. I don't recognize the other names, I don't think, at this point. So move along here, and right away I pick up Compton Master, I know. So this is a nice hand here, obviously pocket king, second best in the deck. Obviously there's nothing that's going to get me to fold this hand pre-flop, I don't think. It would take some pretty retarded action. So let's see what happens here. I don't recall this hand, so I don't think it's going to be a big pot. We have a early position raise from Compton Master who makes it 2.5x. And it folds to me, and I'm expecting that I probably just flat this hand for a lot of reasons. We're so deep. He's over 200 big blinds deep. If I do 3-bet it, I expect him to call because we're so deep, and then I'm playing a bigger pot out of position. So I'm pretty sure I decide just to flat to try and get some value out of my hand this way by disguising the strength of my hand. And let's see what happens. So we end up going heads up. Flops Ace King Queen, giving us middle set, and of course the only hand that beats us is pocket aces or 10 Jack. Now if he bet this, I'm probably just check calling once, because I do, he could definitely have 10 Jack, or he could have a big combo draw with clubs, and I definitely don't want to get stacks in on this flop. So I check, he checks behind. Now at this point, again, you want to try and figure out what they have so that you can get maximum value, or I guess at this point get maximum value, but when you're beat, you want to kind of try to control your losses, of course. I definitely think there's a 0% chance I'm beat, because I know he's definitely going to bet 10 Jack and he's going to bet aces to try and get some money in the pot and build a bigger pot. So I know I have the best hand when he checks behind, so I'm going to bet just about any turn that comes except for that turn. I don't expect him to have a flush, because he definitely would have bet a flush draw on the flop, but he could have like any random 10 that he might have checked behind on that flop. Queen 10, King 10, Ace 10, even like 10-9 or pocket 10s. He probably would have bet 10-9. That's about the only one. So I don't love the turn, and even if he has just any random hand with just a club, he still can draw out that way. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be check calling here, but I think it goes check check here as well, which it does, and the river's an 8 of diamonds, so I'm now going to obviously bet my hand. I could check to try and get a check raise in, but he hasn't tried to win the pot yet, so I don't expect him to to really try on the river. I think at this point he probably has something with showdown value. He might have a weak ace, he might have like just a king or a queen. What I'm really hoping is that he has pocket eights that he's been checking behind, and now when I bet he goes for a raise. So when considering my bet sizing, I thought I could bet a tiny bit to maybe induce him to raise, but I just don't think he's going to do it with anything but pocket eights, and I expect him to maybe raise pocket eights anyway. So I probably bet about maybe 280, 300 here, just over half pot. Yeah, 280, and I believe he calls with ace rag if I remember this hand right. Yeah, so he had ace 4. I guess it's probably an okay call by him. I don't see myself really betting much worse, although yeah, like there's no king that I would have been betting, like king queen, king jack, Jack is 2 pair, King 10 is a straight. Yeah, if he probably would have thought longer, he probably could have easily just folded to my 1 bet, even though it was checked all the way down. But anyways, I got paid off a little bit, and I also kind of put a weird thought in their head because they just saw me flat kings, which I like. I like to kind of confuse them a little bit and to put some doubt in their head in terms of what kind of hands that I'm flatting with. Okay, so here we have Ace 10, and we're back up over 23,000 chips. It folds to me. I go ahead and min raise, and we end up getting 3 bet from the button. Now, this is a player that I recognized right off the bat, who I thought was going to be on the aggressive side, and he's on the button. We're super deep in the in terms of stacks, and I expect him to be 3-betting the button with a pretty wide range here, just trying to build some pots in position against me. So I'm pretty sure I decide that I'm probably going to defend this, just because Ace 10's well ahead of his his squeeze range. I expect him to have Ace Rag a lot. A lot of people like to to 3-bet with kind of like a a blocker, sort of as a semi bluff with Ace Rag, or if he does have Jack 10, Queen 10, King 10. I have all those hands dominated, which are hands that a lot of people like to re-raise with to give them more ways to win the pot. So I'm probably going to call here, which I do, and I'm basically just playing this hand to hit and then to play it for value against the hands that he has dominated. I'm probably not going to be check calling with Ace High here very often. Basically, I'm just speculating a little bit to try and hit and hopefully get some good value that way. So flop comes Jack 4 Rainbow, Jack 5 4 Rainbow. I expect him to bet when I check, and I expect myself to fold here. Yeah, he bets really small, only like 40% of the pot, and even though I don't expect him to have much, I don't have much anyway. Ace 10 high, and I don't really want to get involved in kind of check calling down multiple streets with Ace High, because he could have a very wide range, and I'll just kind of set that up, hopefully to win a bigger pot off him later. Is kind of my thinking there. I don't mind giving away a few small pots to hopefully set up myself to win a big pot. Okay. So we go through here, King 3 suited, I'm just going to fold, and here we have Ace 3 suited under the gun, and as I went through earlier, this is a hand that I'm always going to play, especially early in the tournament. So I min raise, again he 3-bets me, and again, this one's a little bit different than the Ace 10 because I don't necessarily have any of his aces beat, obviously, but I still think he's 3-betting me with lesser suited cards. King Queen or Queen Jack suited, things like that. So again, it's very little for me to call this bet, so I don't mind speculating again, even though again it sort of seems a bit spewy, but I'm doing it for value against the range of his hands. So I call. This flop I like a bit better for my Ace High hand, but again, I'm pretty sure he bets probably the exact same amount he did last time, probably 400, and I'm pretty sure I just fold as well. And again, I'm kind of giving him a free 1,000 chips there, but kind of setting things up for later, and I don't mind it all that much. And we'll just try and win a bigger pot off him later is kind of my thought. Alright, so very next hand I get Ace King off in the big blind, and I'm pretty sure I remember this hand. I think it'll be against Compton Masta, who's going to raise 3x. This is the same player that I flatted with Pocket Kings just a few hands ago, and I'm pretty sure we go heads up and I just call here as well. Now similar to the Kings, I'm calling for just a lot of reasons. If I 3-bet, he's going to call a lot of the time, and I'll be playing a big pot out of position and kind of giving away the strength of my hand. It's going to be easier for him to narrow my range, I guess, and figure out sort of what I have. It's easy for him to put me on Ace King when I 3-bet it, whereas when I flat it, he's not going to put me on that hand, and I might get some pretty good value if he has a weaker Ace or a weaker King, or if the board ever did come 10 Jack Queen, he may decide to rep Ace King thinking that I can never have it. So sometimes you can win some nice pots this way. So I just call Flop comes King Jack 4, which is a pretty good flop for us, obviously. We flop top pair, top kicker. I expect him to bet this most of the time, but he checks. So I now feel that he has, something with showdown value, but that he's kind of trying to pot control. So I thought he might have a jack or like pocket queens or a weak king or something like that. So I'm pretty happy when he checks back, thinking that I might be able to get a couple streets of value off of my king. Now the turn comes a 7 of spades, putting 3 spades out there. I don't expect him to ever have a flush draw, as I expect him to bet his flush draw on the flop there almost every time. So I feel pretty comfortable here just going ahead and betting for value. And I bet 280 into 520. He calls. And basically the only river that I'm not going to bet is probably a spade, or maybe like a queen or a 10, something that puts kind of a scary 2-pair straight combination on there. River comes an 8. 5-6 got there on the river, but it's a pretty narrow part of his range. 5-6 or 7-8, Jack 8 suited, King 8 suited. I don't expect him to have any of those hands here, so I go ahead and bet again. I bet for full value. I bet 600 into 1,080 after betting 280 on the turn, so a little bit bigger than 2 times my turn bet. And he raises here, which kind of put me in obviously a shitty spot. He raised just over 3x, so it's probably a bit of a bad call by me here. I know I make the call and I know I lose. I just felt, I know he's a player I recognize. He's probably on the aggressive side. It's pretty hard for him to be bluff raising here because I could easily have a flush. So I kind of expect him to have it, but I thought that maybe he had like the ace of spades and maybe a pair like ace jack with the ace of spades. So he called the turn, and now he knows that he can't win. So he decided to sort of turn his hand into a bluff, or he might have just had like the naked ace of spades or ace 10 with the ace of spades and knew that he had to try and raise to win this hand. And with the ace of spades, of course, he would have the nut flush blocker, so he knows he's not going to get re-raised, and he knows that I can't have the nut flush. So I felt that he could be bluffing with a missed spade draw. So I decided to make a questionable call, and I believe he has pocket 7s, and he turned the set, just called, and then raised the river. So I lost a pretty decent pot there, and I was back to 20,000 chips to where we started. So basically not much has happened other than just winning that one big hand with the jacks and then losing a big hand there with ace king, and we're back at starting stack, which is disappointing after getting ahead, but it's not the worst thing in the world. We'll just quickly go back to that hand. I just fold queen jacks off under the gun. I'm under the gun. Anyone that I'm playing against is going to be in position against me, basically, and my hand doesn't play that well against ranges that they're probably going to be calling with. Here we have 5-9 suited on the button. I'm assuming here that it's going to fold to me. I think I remember this hand. I min-raise the button, and as in Tracker, who's already 3-bet us twice, 3 bets from the big blind, and so he does a full 3x, a little bit bigger than he had been doing in position. Because I'm in position and we're just so deep, I decided to call here, and we flop pretty decent, Jack 8-7. Again, the other hands I called his 3-bet because I felt I was calling for value against a lot of his range. This time I called because I'm in position and I feel I'm going to have a lot of ways to win the hand, and I could win a pretty decent pot for only speculating the 480. So Jack 7-8, we flop a double gutter. A 6 or a 10 would give us a straight, and we have a backdoor flush draw as well. If I remember this hand correctly, I believe he checks to me, and I bet. If he had bet, I would have definitely called one street. I wouldn't have raised, I would have just called. He checks. I bet just over half pot. I don't necessarily expect him to fold here, but I don't expect him to check raise either. So I kind of want to build a pot in case I get there, and by betting the flop, it's going to give me the option to maybe check behind the turn if I missed and see the turn and the river and try and get there. Or of course, there's a chance he may just fold. He calls, and I believe I bink the turn. I think it's a 6. Yeah. So 6 of diamonds, which is a nice card. It doesn't complete a flush, and it's the better straight for me to hit because the 10 would have made a 4-card straight. Whereas, this way he's not going to see it. He's not going to be as worried about me having a straight because I'd have to have 9-10 or 9-5 or 4-5. So he checks to me, and I go ahead and bet again. Now I bet 550 on the flop. So I'm pretty sure I probably bet around 1150 or 1200 here, probably to stay a bit consistent. But again, I'm trying to build. Actually, go a little bit bigger. I bet 1250. I'm just trying to increase the bet size a little bit so I can bet a bit more on the river. He calls, and if I remember correctly here, I get a bad river card. I think it puts a 4-card straight on there. I think it might be a 10 or a 9 here on the river. Oh no, it was a 4. Yeah, but it does put a 4-card straight out there. That's what I remember. So now if I just had a 5, I would have a straight. So I think he'd check folds. I bet pretty big here because of the 4-card straight. I kind of want to try and make it look like a bluff as much as I can. So I go from 1250 to 2850, so a decent increase in bet size, and he folds. I guess he just didn't feel that I was bluffing at this point. Right, so we won a nice pod there, and we're back up to 22,000. So picked up most of what we lost from that ace-king hand. Okay, and next hand here that we play is ace-king suited. So again, I min-raise this from early position. We get flatted, and we play heads up against Dougler, who we hadn't played a hand against yet. Don't mind playing this hand out of position. It's a small pot. I expect to have him dominated a lot here. And we get a 10-9-3 1-heart flop. Lots of different ways I'm going to play this hand. Sometimes I'm going to c-bet, sort of just to try and take it down, or sort of bet my draw, my 2 overcards, backdoor flush draw. There's a lot of turns that are going to, improve my hand if he does call. Sometimes I'll check call, sort of for value to try and see another street, to try and get him to bet worser hands. Sometimes I may just check fold. It sort of just depends on the situation. I'm pretty sure I bet, and I think he actually raises my bet here, if I remember right. So I bet just over half pot, 240. Yeah, he goes ahead and raises, which is kind of weird. It's often a bluff. It's often a pair trying to get some information. It's often a draw. He could be doing it with a set, of course, just to try and get max value. I really don't have much. Obviously 2 overs, backdoor flush draw. I could have the best hand, but I'm pretty sure I just ditch it and move on and avoid playing a big pot out of position with ace high. So we move through. Doesn't look like I play any of these hands. King Jack suited. Early position raises, and I just fold. That was a close one. If it was a later position open, I probably would have called, or if I was on the button or maybe in the big blind, I might have called. But I just feel if I call, some other people are going to get involved, and I'm playing out of position, probably against them, and I'm playing against an early position raise range, and I just decided not to get involved in that hand. Jack 10 off, I would have folded. Ace deuce off, pretty sure someone raises and I would just fold. I'd probably defend. Oh, actually no. Actually, I gotta walk. There we go. I would have defended against a button or a small blind raise there. Okay, so we're moving through. We're now at hand 118. So we're moving through here fairly quickly, and here we have deuce 3 suited on the button. And if I remember correctly, this folds to me, I raise, and as in tracker 3 bets us again, and I call. So as will often happen, someone will, he just decided that he was going to 3-bet me a lot to try and take control of the table and to use his position advantage against me. But when he does it out of the big blind here, of course I'm in position, and I don't mind playing pots against against him in position when he's 160 big blinds deep, because again, it's only going to cost me 400 chips, and I feel I can maybe win a few thousand chips if I can hit something decent and steal the pot off him, or win the pot, obviously. So he made it a little bit over 3x this time. He's trying to make me pay a little bit more, which is fine. I make the call, and flop is 9-8-3. Right, so on this flop, if he bets, I'm going to call, as I have a pair. I could have the best hand, or if he does have an overpair or something, I can still improve by hitting a deuce or a 3 on the turn or river. He does bet. It's a pretty small bet. He raised the 620 pre, and he bet 550. So it seems like sort of a weak bet. He could have hit a set or something big, and he doesn't want to scare me away, but I'm pretty sure I have the best hand here. The only hands I'm kind of worried about are like maybe pocket 6s or 7s, or like ace-8 or something like that has me beat, that he's just sort of trying to control the size of the pot with. So I go ahead and call. The turn's a 9, which is a safe card for me. If I was behind, though, I'm now in really big trouble, but I don't expect him to bet if I was behind. But if I was ahead, then obviously I'm still ahead. So I think he checks, and if he checks, I'm going to bet here for a few reasons. If I am beat, if he does have pocket 10s or something like that, by betting the turn, he's going to call, and then I can just check back the river, and I lose the same as if I had checked behind and then called a river bet. But if he has a hand like ace-king, he's going to probably check call, and I get value out of those hands. So I lose the same if I'm beat, but I gain value from hands that I'm beating by betting the turn in this spot. So he checks to me. I bet 1300, just over half pot. He calls, and at this point, I'm pretty sure I have the best hand, but he's probably going to play aces through 10s, or a 9 or an 8 the same way. Actually, probably not a 9. He probably would have bet the 9 again. River's a 4, completing a flush. I don't really expect him to have a flush draw that often. He checks, and I just check back, and I believe I win, and he has ace-king. Okay? So the last 2 orbits in a row, I had 9-5 suited and deuce-3 suited, and I won pretty good pots off of that same player. And it kind of goes against my strategy of only playing hands for value in the early stages, but button versus big blind in position when we're really deep, I don't mind speculating a few chips to, again, try and win a bigger pot. So I'm just trying to see here. I don't think I play this ace-3 off. No, under the gun raised, and I just fold. Okay, so we've chipped back up to 24,000, so things are going along pretty well on this table, even though it's been a bit more volatile with As and Tracker 3-betting us 3 different times. We're at hand 127. We're at about 47 minutes here, so I'll maybe just go through. It looks like I win this hand and the next hand, so I'll go through these next 2, and then we'll close things down for part 1. So I min raise, king queen off, and it folds around, and I steal the blinds. Okay, and we're up to 5,100 now, and there's also antes. So it's the pots are going to get a bit bigger now. Everyone, I feel, is probably going to get a little bit more aggressive with antes in the middle. Plus the 5,100, it's kind of now all of a sudden we have a sort of a bigger amount in the big blind, and it always seems pots get a little bit bigger now. So again, I just raised the previous hand with king queen. So I like this one. The second hand I raise in a row is a monster, because often you're going to get some decent action. So I raise under the gun. This person flats me. As in Tracker, instead of 3-betting or squeezing, decides to flat. So expect him to have sort of a real hand here that he wants to see a flop with, like a smaller mid pair or something like that. And I believe, if I remember correctly, somebody squeezes this hand. Because there's one more flat from Compton Master, and I believe the cooler makes us about 1,200. Yeah, 1,200. Okay, and it folds back to me. I have a lot of options here. Well, basically, I have 2 options. I'm either going to just call and play the hand out of position, hopefully heads up against that guy. It's a big enough squeeze that I don't really worry about other people coming into the pot. Or I could 4-bet, of course, and build a much bigger pot. He's about 100 big blinds deep. I think that he's light here so often that I kind of just prefer a flat to play my hand sort of disguised and for value against his weak raising range, and pot control in case he somehow does have aces or kings, as opposed to 4-betting and stealing what's in there if he folds, or just playing a really big pot out of position if he does decide to flat. So I think I just call, yeah. And if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure everyone else gets out of the way. And again, because it's an extra 1,000 chips, even if they have a small pair, they're not really getting set mining odds, and no one wants to just give away 1,000 chips just to try and hit a set at this point. So we do go heads up to the flop. Flop is ace 8 deuce. Obviously, I don't love the flop. If he has ace king or just any random ace that he decided to squeeze, of course he now has the best hand. But again, I think that he has air a lot in his squeeze range, and also hands like jacks and tens and things like that. So I'm pretty sure that I'm just going to check call a bet here. I expect him to bet most times just because he squeezed and an ace came. So he bets under just over 1/3, well under half the pot. And again, I'm happy about this. It means I'm not having to call big bets. I don't want to be putting a lot of chips in the pot in this hand, but I'm not going to just fold. So I call. Turn is a 6 of clubs, which is obviously a decent card. Really the only hand that it could have improved for him is like 8-6 suited, or if he does have like ace-6, he's now going to feel more comfortable putting more bets in, whereas he might have just checked if the 6 hadn't come. I don't expect him to ever have pocket 6s, as I think he would have just called pre-flop to try and hit a set. I think this goes check. And to be honest, I'm not sure what I would have done if he would have bet again on the turn. I would have just looked at his bet sizing and just tried to make the best read possible, whether I thought that I had the best hand or not. It's really hard to predict whether I would have called or not. I didn't really have a plan when I checked the turn to him. I was just going to sort of decide and see what happened. So river's a jack. I don't love that card because, of course, there's one more hand that I was beating that I'm now not if he had jacks. But I think jacks also kind of represents a hand that I could have a lot. So I sort of expect him to check back if he does have an ace, or even if he had kings or something like that. I don't expect him to bet very many hands here. If he had bet, again, I would have had a really tough decision. But I'm pretty sure it goes check, and I think he has queen jack suited. Yep. So it made it an easy check for him on the river because he picked up the jack, so he didn't feel the need to have to bluff it because he thought he could win against some pairs that I had. It's a bit of a weird squeeze by him in that a lot of people are going to want to just flat with queen jack suited to see a flop, but I guess he kind of turned it into a semi bluff to try and steal the hand, or to be able to win the hand without having to hit. Right. So that's that. After that hand, we were chipped up right up to 27,000, which is pretty nice in these first early levels. And we will continue on from this spot at hand 129 in part 2. Hope to see you all then. Talk to you later.